So this is going to be a review of Andor, the latest Star Wars series for Disney Plus. They just had season 1 end a few days ago, so I'm going to be coming out with my review right here. This is going to be pretty much a spoiler-free review. I'm not going to be going into any super deep story, detailed spoilers or nothing like that. So if you haven't seen the show or if you haven't finished it yet, you'll be fine if you watch/listen to this. So over the past few years, audiences have gotten a solid taste of what Star Wars has to offer in the form of these Disney Plus shows. We've gotten The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Kenobi. Each of them to varying degrees of success. You know, The Mandalorian has obviously been a runaway hit. Everybody universally loves that. Book of Boba Fett, not so great. I'll put it that way. And then Kenobi, I guess the reception was a little bit more mixed, but I thought it was a solid show. Definitely not great, but solid for the most part. And at least the people I've talked to feel the same way about it. Now, the trailers for Andor, though, revealed something different. It revealed a tone, direction, and even filmmaking different from any of the stuff we've seen in these previous Star Wars Disney shows. Noteworthy about this series is about what it did not appear to have based on the trailers. When it comes to stories that connect to the Skywalkers, legacy Star Wars stuff, and icons from the original trilogy, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, the series was focusing on a character that we'd already seen before, but Cassian Andor is hardly a legacy character like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Boba Fett. Now, obviously, given the fate of Cassian Andor and Rogue One, a Star Wars story, any series that was going to involve him directly was going to take place pre-Rogue One, and that's what we got here. For your basic synopsis of this show, in a time of great crisis across the galaxy, Cassian Andor embarks on a path destined for him to become a rebellion hero. It should be noted that although this show takes place before Rogue One, this is not the Rogue One direct prequel, which was something that would have been obviously tempting to do. It's not the whole thing. It's like, hey, this is how this connects to Rogue One. This is how this sets up Rogue One. No, none of that. This is more so a showcase of Cassian Andor doing his best to survive the shitty times the entire galaxy is dealing with under the Empire. Now, I feel the general opinion amongst most viewers is that quality-wise, the best Star Wars movie or series that Disney has produced is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I know that The Mandalorian is definitely probably the big fan favorite and the one that they've produced the most merchandise out of, but definitely Rogue One, I feel most people feel like is quality-wise the best. Released in 2016, while the film went under a turbulent post-production involving tons of reshoots, I mean, go back and watch that original Rogue One trailer. It's pretty much a different movie from the final result. But the final result that we did get was a film that had edge, darkness, and quality storytelling resulting in my favorite of anything Disney Star Wars. I just think it's an excellent movie that has the appropriate amount of darkness, storytelling, and some fun elements in action going for it. In terms of overall, it's probably my third favorite Star Wars movie of everything, right behind A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Now, that tone and direction was the direct inspiration for this series. I went to D23 a few months ago before the show even premiered, and they were talking about how they love that tone that they did. Kathleen Kennedy talked about how they love that tone that they had for Rogue One, that cinematic quality. And they wanted to bring that cinematic quality, direction, and tone for this series. Appropriately so, since we're dealing with one of the main characters from that film, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. It's a tone and direction that works wonders for this series, and a nice change in pace from the more fanciful and wondrous tones of the previous series that we've had. Even something supposed to be more darker, like The Mandalorian, and did have its dark moments and vibes, is much lighter in tone compared to this series. Here in this series, the sort of world that we see in that Andor lives in, there are no jokes. You can count on probably on one hand the amount of times a character smiles in this series. There's no cute droids, no cute creatures. It's overall reflective of the world and times that these characters are dealing with. Like I said, appropriately so, given the sort of trying times that the galaxy is under and the conditions that we see most of the characters are dealing with in this series. This is not a series for kids, not because of any violence or language or adult content, nothing like that. It's just that the tone will bore kids, as it's not something that has a whole lot of fun elements for them to enjoy, unlike the previous sort of series that we've seen, like The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and Kenobi. This leads to some of my complaints of this show. Yeah, the direction and all that is great. It's a lot of it's really good. The tone and whatnot, I really did appreciate. But in terms of my complaints, it doesn't really have so much to do with the tone, just the overall content in some of these episodes, particularly my complaints in the beginning. Towards the beginning, there were a handful of episodes at the beginning of the show that were just boring. Not because of the tone or anything like that. It's just that there wasn't really anything happen. Nothing happened really. The first third of the show deals with mainly Cassian joining a group bent on pulling off some kind of heist at an Empire storage facility. And there were multiple episodes where it was just these characters standing and talking about doing shit, planning, that kind of thing. The most exciting thing that would happen would be a TIE fighter flying by. It wasn't ideal. I was talking to some friends after these first few episodes saying, am I the only one that's kind of bored by what's going on? There's just not a lot happening. And they said, yeah, we feel the same way. And I felt that way about some of the overall show, even past those few episodes. Besides that, a lot of the Mon Mothma stuff was putting me to sleep. These scenes were very stagnant, went around in circles, and there was no build up to any of them. You know, every single conversation and scene felt like they ended the same way. Besides that, I thought the other characters that we saw here were, for the most part, just okay. You know, Cassian is still Cassian, not drastically different from how we see him as a character in Rogue One. He's just at a different stage in his pre-rebellion life. Although I did think Diego Luna was once again really good here. The character who was probably my favorite here was Bix. She's a character who, through the performance and the writing, you can see that she's been through a lot, and that's reflective of the suffering we see her endure in this show in more than one way. So I did really like her. Stellan Skarsgård, he was good here, but I didn't really feel strong about his character one way or the other, mainly because the show really couldn't decide how I should feel about his character one way or the other. But overall, as a performance, he was solid, and I thought whoever was Mon Mothma, she was fine too. It's just that a lot of the scenes with that character, like I said, I just thought were kind of stagnant and just kind of bored me. The show goes through its ups and downs when it comes to levels of excitement and noteworthy occurrences. Thankfully, the story is not stagnant. There's a decent amount of variety in the situations that Andor finds himself in. The prison/detention center sequence or episodes is the show's probably most noteworthy occurrence, along with the finale. I thought those whole prison episodes were really good, especially sort of the climax of that whole occurrence. And the finale, the final episode, was very well done here. It had a good mix of everything. That's unfortunately mixed. Those episodes are mixed with a lot of ups and downs when it came to episodes that I really cared for at all. I'd give this show, this season 1 episode, and season 1 anyway, 7 out of 10. You know, it was goodish, it was solid, but there were a few occurrences that I thought it was great. Thankfully, I didn't think it was ever a complete disaster. It just had a lot of occurrences where it's like, man, needs to be some more stuff happening here. And sometimes this tone, it's almost a little too self-indulgent in thinking that just because it has the tone, they don't have to put forth content that's really sort of worth a shit. A lot of it was just sort of, at least the stuff that I didn't think was going so great, was just sort of episodes that were going around in kind of like circles and not really a whole lot of noteworthy occurrences and whatnot. There's just a lot of stuff I thought could have been improved with this series to make it a more sort of well-rounded powerhouse for everyone. I did like I said, that this show did the stuff when it came to sort of straying away from what these series had previously been doing in terms of sort of the Star Wars legacy stuff, the characters and stuff like that. I think these next sort of Star Wars shows should continue doing that, because that was really good what this series did, but just sort of improve the overall quality in more ways than one. I'd put it that way. But like I said, I thought this was solid for the most part. I'd like to see this series go through a trajectory like The Mandalorian did, where season 1 of that show I thought was, you know, pretty solid or okay. You know, it was a 7 out of 10 like this one. But then they made the improvements to the overall storytelling and content and whatnot to where I thought season 2 was a 10 out of 10. Hopefully this series can do that also. That's another thing that kind of surprised me, was that I thought originally this was just going to be sort of a standalone kind of like mini series and stuff like that. But then it ends in a way to where like, oh, that's not the end of that story. So clearly there's more, and hopefully more to come. And hopefully we can see more the quality improve with season 2, at least for me anyway. So that'll do it for this review of Andor. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching.